Hi, readers. It's me, Mrs. Wingers, and I am back with another read aloud. So I picked a book today that it's really cool, and it goes with our whole biographies thing and the unit that we are in the middle of now, which is all about inspiring people, finding inspiration through people who have changed the world, and thinking about, you know, what did they do and how did they live their lives, and kind of thinking about our own impact. So this is a book that I got last year. It's called Earth Heroes, and it even has a sticker on here. Look at that. It says, read this book. It's full of inspiring ideas. Now, it's a woman named Emma Thompson who wrote that, who's another one of my heroes. Fun fact. So this is it's like an anthology of biographies, kind of, or just bits of information about people who have changed the world. So as you can see in the table of contents, there you go. There's each chapter is about a different person. And so lots of inspiring ideas here. And I'm going to read one chapter for this read aloud, one about one person. And that person's name is Greta Thunberg. And she's someone who really, really inspires me, and the work she's done in her life, which has not really been that long. She's not that old. She's a kid. And so you're going to learn about her in the read aloud. Now, I have my book. I have my reader's notebook. I have a pen. I have sticky notes. And I need to pop over to the informational reading progression, because biographies are informational. They are true stories. So let's have a look and find a skill to focus on. Okay, so here's the informational reading progression. Now, I need to be totally honest with you. I'm doing two things in this read aloud. One, I'm modeling how to do one of these reading skills, which I always do in a read aloud. I'm teaching you these skills, but I'm also showing you how to read for information. Right? I want to learn about Greta Thunberg. I want to pull out some facts. So I'm focusing like half on an informational reading skill and half on getting information about the person I'm reading. So I'm really using this as like a double teaching opportunity, if that makes sense. So, so I'm going to pick a reading skill, probably only one, because I am kind of focusing on this other part. I'm going to scroll down. Comparing and contrasting, maybe not. Analyzing author's craft, maybe. I think I'm going to do analyzing perspective. So I'm going to notice, because this is the first chapter I'm reading in this book, and this is something, analyzing perspective is usually something we do in the beginning. I'm going to ask myself, who is telling this story? Right? Who is this, a story from Greta Thunberg's point of view, or is this like a narrator telling the story? So that will be the reading skill I'm focusing on. But also throughout the text, I'm going to really be focusing on pulling out facts and information about her life that resonate with me. Okay? So let me write that down in my notebook. Few mistakes. You saw me make some mistakes. The title, Earth Heroes by Lily Dew, which, the reason why I made that mistake, doesn't that kind of look like an N, right? And then I realized, no, that's actually a U. So there's that mistake. I put the date, and then I also put the title of the chapter I'm reading, which is all about Greta Thunberg. I also wrote my skill, which is analyzing perspective. Okay, here we go. Greta Thunberg, the girl who sparked a revolution. And here's a photo of her. With a quote that says, "We can't save the world by playing by the rules. The rules have to be changed." The forest was burning. Enormous orange flames curled around tree trunks and climbed into the canopy. The heat was intense and smoke filled the air. 100 volunteer firefighters, students, teachers, and holidaymakers had come from Jokmok, the nearest town, to help. As Greta watched the drama unfold on her television screen, they pointed the hose pipes at blazing trees and blackened stumps. Above the crackle of flames and the thud of falling branches, she could hear the thrum of a helicopter overhead as its pilot desperately dropped water bombs to douse the flames. Okay, well, so this is clearly a really intense lead. I'm kind of thinking a little bit about analyzing author's craft here, which wasn't one of my skills, but my brain kind of goes that way. I'm really hooked. But I also noticed something that does align with my skill, which is that this text, this chapter is written in third person. If it was written in first person, it would be Greta telling her own story. But clearly, because in this sentence, as Greta watched the drama unfold on her television screen, this is a story being told about her by like a narrator or someone else who's watching. So I'm going to make a quick note of that just to show that I figured out the perspective. Made an observation that I know the story is being told in third person. It is being told about Greta. She's not telling the story herself. I know this because it says Greta was and not I was. It was July 2018. It had been a freakishly hot summer in Sweden with a drought and the highest temperatures recorded in over 260 years. Wildfires had raged uncontrollably through the country's forest. Jokkmokk is famous for its winter market, but even this area of Lapland at the Arctic Circle had not escaped the fires, the largest of which tore through an area the size of 900 football pitches. In Greta's home city, Stockholm, it had been the hottest summer since records began, with many days exceeding 30 degrees Celsius. Okay, so I'm getting some information now about Greta. So this the time in 2018, July 2018. And where is this story? Sweden, right? So that is where Greta's from. A month later, Greta sat at her kitchen table making preparations. As she thought about the key facts people should know about global warming and, choosing her words carefully, she neatly wrote out a stack of flyers. Then, on a board, she painted the words, "School Strike for Climate." Her parents tried to dissuade her, but the next morning, instead of heading off to school, she stuffed the flyers and some school books into her rucksack, jumped onto her bike, and pedaled to the Swedish Parliament building. She sat down outside, propping her sign against the wall. People hurried by on their way to work, clutching briefcases and sipping from coffee cups. But if they noticed the slight girl with long brown pigtails, they didn't stop to find out more. Greta was skipping school to protest about climate change. All summer, she had followed the news of Sweden's wildfires and the heat wave that killed hundreds of people across Europe. In 2015, Sweden had been one of the 197 countries that signed the Paris Climate Agreement. Each country had agreed to reduce their greenhouse emissions so that the rise in global temperature could be limited to less than 2 degrees Celsius. But little had changed since that time. Without action, children like her would grow up in a world dangerously affected by climate change. And yet, nobody seemed to be doing anything about it. She had no choice but to act. Greta would strike from school until Parliament made the urgent changes to laws needed to make the Paris Agreement targets. Okay, so I'm learning some information and facts here. And I want to just take some notes because as I'm learning these things, I want to make sure I keep them in my brain. And in order to do that, I want to write them down in my notebook. So I want to talk about how I know she's from Sweden. I know that this is happening in like July 2018 is when she kind of was inspired to do this protest. Also, her whole thing was that she sat in front of the Swedish government building. She skipped school and to protest climate change. So that's kind of like what her whole thing's about. So I'm going to take some notes about that. Okay, so some main things that I've picked up in my reading so far. July 2018 was hot because of climate change. Greta skipped school to protest. She lives in Sweden. She thought the government wasn't doing enough to stop climate change. This moment of protest didn't appear from nowhere. Greta had been building up for it for the last 7 years. She lives in Sweden's capital city along with her younger sister. Her mother is an opera singer and her father an actor. He stays home to look after his daughters. Growing up, Greta learned piano and ballet. She loved being outdoors, horse riding, and walking the family's dogs. Before her climate strike, she had just been a normal schoolgirl, if a little quiet and shy, the girl at the back of the class who was afraid to speak up. Greta was 8 when she first learned about climate change. Her teacher had shown a film about the melting Arctic ice, starving polar bears, and plastic in the ocean. As she watched, Greta cried. And when her classmates went back to their games, she could not forget what she had seen. Greta started to read everything she could about the problem. She discovered that global warming is causing droughts, floods, extreme heat waves, and forcing people to leave their homes. Human actions are also destroying wildlife and their habitats. She was shocked that the world had known about climate change for 30 years, but instead of treating it as an emergency, adults didn't seem to be taking it seriously. TV programs and newspapers weren't talking about it, and little had been done to try and stop it. What kind of world would she live in when she grew up? At 11, feeling hopeless about the planet's future, Greta became depressed. She stopped going to school. She stopped eating and lost 10 kilograms in weight. She also stopped speaking to anyone apart from her family. She was sick. Greta was off school for a year while her parents took care of her. During that time, she learned that she had Asperger's syndrome, which means she has a different way of seeing the world compared to most people. While at home, she eventually told her parents about her worries about the environment. Sharing her fears made her feel a little better. After that, Greta would not stop talking to her parents about the climate crisis and showed them books, articles, films, and reports she had found. Her parents grew to realize that they'd never really taken her seriously before, or climate change. By then, Greta had already become a vegan and had stopped shopping for new things. Soon, her father became a vegetarian, and her whole family stopped traveling by plane. They started to cycle to get around and replace their car with an electric one. Seeing her family change made Greta realize that she could make a difference. It helped to lift her out of her depression, and she decided to devote her life to fighting climate change. Okay, so I'm learning a few more things here now. She first learned about climate change when she was 8 years old and became a little bit obsessed. Then when she was 11 years old, she got really sick because all these feelings were like really stuck inside of her. But then she started noticing changes that her family made, inspired by what Greta was saying and doing. And she thought, maybe I can help change the world, not only my family. So I'm going to take a few notes about that. So I've written at age 8, she first learned about climate change here. And then at age 11, she got really sad and sick because she felt hopeless. Then she realized she could help fight climate change. Greta returned to school, where she joined a climate action group. Inspired by school strikes in America to protest against guns, someone suggested they could have a school strike too. Greta loved this idea, but no one wanted to join her. So she left the group and decided to strike alone. On the first day of her protest, Greta sat outside the Parliament building from 8:30 a.m. to 3 p.m., the whole school day. She posted pictures on social media, and from the second day, people started to join her. Newspapers were soon reporting on her story. Passing politicians told her she was wasting lesson time, but she told them adults had wasted 30 years by not acting against global warming. Others said she should go back to school and study science so she could find a solution to climate change. But she told them that it had already been found. Greenhouse gas emissions had to stop. All that was needed was for people to wake up and change. Greta skipped school for 3 weeks. up until Sweden's election in September. After that, she continued to strike every Friday, even through the harsh Swedish winter. In ice and snow, wrapped in a yellow raincoat, ski trousers, and a woolly hat, she sat outside Parliament. People had ignored her when she first started her protest, but now adults, as well as students, traveled to join her. Greta's story spread around the world, and soon students in other countries were inspired to hold their own Fridays for the Future strikes too. In autumn 2018, Greta stood for the first time in front of thousands of people. It was a climate change rally outside the European Parliament. Her parents had worried about their shy daughter taking the stage, but Greta insisted on going. That day, she gave a perfect speech in English, her second language. Her father was so proud that he cried. Since then, Greta has spoken all over Europe. Her parents drove her to London so she could address thousands at an Extinction Rebellion protest. She has given a TED Talk that has been watched by millions on YouTube. And unlike the leaders of the countries she has visited, Greta matches her words with her actions. She took a 32-hour train journey to talk to world leaders in Davos, Switzerland, while others arrived by private jet. And to give a speech in New York, she traveled by racing yacht because it was the most environmentally friendly way to cross the ocean. In her speeches, Greta has warned the world's leaders that they're stealing their own children's futures through inaction. She doesn't want them to offer people hope. In fact, she doesn't want them to feel hopeful at all. She wants them to feel the same panic and fear that she feels each day when thinking about the climate crisis. And then she wants them to act. Juggling schoolwork with saving the planet takes a lot of time and energy. Greta gets up at 6 a.m. to get ready for school. Homework, interviews, and writing speeches can mean 15-hour working days. However, she always catches up on missed lessons and is near the top of her class. The importance of what she's doing gives her the strength to keep going. And she believes that rather than being something she would want to change, her Asperger's syndrome has actually helped her activism. It has allowed her to see problems clearly and meant she was happy to begin her strike alone. If not stopped, climate change will affect people all over the world, and it could lead to wars as drought and crop failure force people to leave their homelands and search for food. To recognize her work, Greta has been nominated for the 2019 Nobel Peace Prize, the youngest person ever to be nominated for this very important award. In March 2019, 7 months after Greta first sat down in front of Sweden's parliament, she was there again, but this time alongside 20,000 students marching and chanting slogans. That same day, 1.6 million students in 125 countries, from Australia and Uganda to Japan and America, all left their desks to take part in over 200 peaceful marches in the Youth Global Climate Strike for the Future. Greta's lone protest has grown into a global movement. Greta will strike outside Parliament every Friday until Sweden acts on the promises it made in the Paris Agreement. And only when our leaders wake up and listen to the scientists will she and other people gladly return to school. In the meantime, she says that if children can make headlines all over the world by skipping school one day a week, imagine what we could all achieve together if we tried. But if there's one thing that Greta's incredible story proves, it's that we have the power to demand change, and that we are never too small to make a difference. Okay, so that's the end of the chapter. And there was quite a lot of facts in that last little bit. So her protest that she started all by herself turned into a global movement, right? People started taking photographs of her. It started spreading through global media. And she's not just someone who talks about what we should do. She actually does it. She doesn't fly in planes. She doesn't, eat any animal products. She doesn't buy new stuff. She does things in her life that will help reduce greenhouse gas emissions, which is what we need to do to stop climate change. So, wow, what an inspiration. I'm going to finish up a few notes and then rate the book, and then we'll be done here. Okay, so I've written kind of a long reflection here because I am doing a lot of thinking and I have a lot to say. I wrote, Greta's story has taught us that one person can make a huge difference. She was not worried about what other people were thinking. She followed her heart and did what she thought was right. And by doing that, she's inspired millions of people, even me. I think it is important to hear her story because it reminds me to make sure I am living my life in ways that align with my integrity. So I just added it to my book list of books I've read this year. I gave it a 5 out of 5, of course. Anytime a book inspires me to make changes in my life in positive ways, I always give it a 5 out of 5. They're some of my favorite books. And I guess I want to hear, I'll be reading a lot more biographies over the next few weeks, but I want to know who inspires you. Who do you want me to read about? I love hearing about that sort of thing. And when we can learn and be inspired together, I think that's one of the most magical things that can happen in school. So let me know. And thanks for watching this, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.